Dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisance. Our worship Prabhupada and Gurudev. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudhiraye. Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya. Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtaki. Today we are reading Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 1, Text 40 to 52. Text 40. The Yamadutas replied, which is prescribed in the Vedas constitute dharma, the religious principles, and the opposite of that is irreligion. The Vedas are directly the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayana, and are self-born. This we have heard from Yamaraj. Text 41. The supreme cause of all causes, Narayana, is situated in his own abode in the spiritual world, but nevertheless he controls the entire cosmic manifestation according to the three modes of material nature, Sattva-guna, Rajoguna, and Tamoguna. In this way, all living entities are awarded different qualities, different names, such as Brahmana, Kshatriya, and Vaishya, different duties according to the Varnashrama institution, and different forms. Thus, Narayana is the cause of all entire cosmic manifestation. Text 42. The sun, fire, sky, air, demigods, moon, evening, day, night, directions, water, land, and supersoul himself all witness the activities of the living entity. Text 43. The candidates for punishment are those who are confirmed by these many witnesses to have deviated from their prescribed regulative duties. Everyone engaged in fruitive activities is suitable to be subjected to punishment according to his sinful acts. Text 44. O inhabitants of Vaikuntha, you are sinless, but those within this material world are all karmis, whether acting piously or impiously. Both kinds of action are possible for them because they are contaminated by the three modes of nature and must act accordingly. One who has accepted a material body cannot be inactive, and sinful action is inevitable for one acting under the modes of material nature. Therefore, all the living entities within this material world are punishable. Text 45. In proportion to the extent of one's religious or irreligious actions in his life, one must enjoy or suffer the corresponding reactions of his karma in the next. Text 46. O best of the demigods, we can see three different varieties of life, which are due to the contamination of the three modes of nature. The living entities are thus known as peaceful, restless, and foolish, as happy, unhappy, or in between, or as religious, irreligious, or semi-religious. We can deduct that deduce that in the next life, these three kinds of material nature will similarly act. Text 47. Just as springtime in the present indicates the nature of the springtimes in the past and future, so this life of the happiness, distress, or a mixture of both gives evidence concerning the religious and irreligious activities of one's past and future lives. Text 48. The omnipotent Yamaraja is as good as Lord Brahma, for while situated in his own abode or in everyone's heart, like the Paramatma, he mentally observes the past activities of the living entity and thus understands how the living entity will act in future lives. Text 49. As a sleeping person acts according to the body manifested in his dreams and accepts it to be himself, so one identifies with his present body, which is acquired because of his past religious or irreligious actions, and is unable to know his past or future lives. Text 50. Above the five senses of perception, the five working senses, and the five objects of the senses is the mind, which is the 16th element. Above the mind is the 17th element, the soul, the living being himself, who, in cooperation with the other 16, enjoys the material world alone. The living being enjoys three kinds of situations, namely happy, distressful, and mixed. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you so much, Prasanthi Mataji. Hare Krishna. So let us offer brief prayers and then we continue from there. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gnanajana Shalakaya Chakshurunmritam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desatarane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavanda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so we're in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and like Gopijan Primataji started in the beginning, in the first class of the first chapter of this canto, this chapter is primarily giving us the knowledge about the portion or the protection offered by the Supreme Lord. This, if you are attentive to this canto descriptions of different pastimes, will naturally appreciate and love Supreme Lord's affectionate nature towards his devotees, his Bhaktavatsal nature to his devotees, how he protects his devotees, even though devotees make some mistakes sometimes, how he takes care of them. So that is what we'll appreciate in this canto, oral canto. And specifically in these first 3 chapters, we are hearing the pastime of Ajamila, who got the second opportunity, who got the second chance to practice bhakti again, and who perfected his life. Through this story of Ajamila, if we're attentive to these 3 chapters, we can understand what is the essence of bhakti life. How do we, what is the importance of the holy name in our practicing devotee's life, our perfected devotee's life? Like that, we can understand through these first 3 chapters. So if you just pay attention to these 3 chapters, we can get immense motivation and inspiration to chant the holy name with quality and chant the holy name with sufficient number of times every day. Yeah. So let us pay attention to that. So that way, especially the next couple of chapters, second and third chapters, will have a lot of glories of the holy name and lot of inspiration from pure devotees like Yamaraja, giving us the inspiration to chant the holy name. So we can be attentive towards that. So today's section is from verse 40 to 52. I think it's 52. Let me check. Yeah, basically, 52. Yeah. So basically, I want to convey the overall theme for this section. So that way we have the overall understanding before we dive into the details. Overall theme for this section is a response to the questions that are asked in the previous 2 verses, which is all about what is dharma, what is the dharma, what is the process of punishment, who will be punished, everybody will be punished or not, like that. Those kind of questions, Vishnu Dutas asked questions to Yamadutas. So now Yamadutas are responding to their questions based on what they heard from Yamaraj, their guru. So the overall theme for this section is how if we follow what is given in Vedas, which are originating from Krishna, then that is dharma. If not, it's adharma. But then people, all of us, if I'm in bodily conception, then naturally I want to do something beneficial for my body and not do something that is not beneficial for my body. So because of the bodily conception, if I'm thinking I want this, I want that, and do dharma also accordingly, then that is not the highest dharma. The highest dharma is to understand what is pleasing to Krishna, what is satisfying to Krishna, and then act accordingly. That is the highest dharma. But the Yamadutas, when explaining in this chapter, they don't go to the highest principle yet. But Srila Prabhupada, being merciful, in his purports, he's directing to the highest principle of understanding Krishna, following Krishna's instructions, and acting to please Krishna as the highest dharma. Though Yamadutas don't talk about it, Prabhupada talks about that highest level. So that is the important principle, is not be aware of our bodily conception and try to practice spiritual conception of us being souls, part and parcel of Krishna and servant of Krishna, being aware of that and conscious of that, and try to avoid the sense gratification, because that is coming because of our bodily conception of I want to give pleasure to the body. So two we talked about, correct our conception from bodily conception to spiritual conception, and be wary of sense gratification, because that is arising from bodily conception, and then take shelter of Krishna by following instructions of Krishna and trying to please Krishna through the Bhagavad Dharma, which is through Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, through chanting and hearing primarily, are the first set of processes for Bhagavad Dharma. So the overall theme is being aware of our bodily conception and try to situate in spiritual conception, try to avoid sense gratification, and take shelter of Krishna through his instructions and through guidance of Guru, and continue to practice bhakti through Shravanam and Kirtanam. That's the essence of this section. So now we'll go into the details of this section. In the previous last two verses, we heard about different questions from Vishnudutas to Yamadutas. So what was the context? Context was Ajamala was a pious Brahmana who was doing some religious practices, and however, because of the bad association, he fell into a lot of sinful activity in the past. And because of he has done so much sinful activities in terms of his body, mind, and words, so naturally, Yamadutas came at the end of the life to take his soul to hellish planets. So that is what that is the context where Yamadutas came in. And then, but because he chanted just at that right moment of time, he chanted the holy name of the Lord by thinking about his son really. So that's when Vishnudutas appeared. Our acharyas describe Vishnudutas appeared just because he chanted the name of the Lord. Whether he thought about the Lord or not doesn't matter. He chanted the name of the Lord, so we need to come. Because he chanted 4-syllable mantra, Narayana, so 4 Vishnudutas came, like that is described. So that is the first level. First level of understanding is just because he chanted the name of the Lord, Vishnudutas appeared, number one. Number two, there was some discussion last couple of days, I think, about whether he chanted the name of the Lord, whether he thought about the Lord or not. The acharyas give different explanations for that. One explanation they give is that because Ajamila was originally practicing bhakti also, along with whatever he was doing in the beginning days before he became sinful. So, because of that bhakti he performed there, now when he chanted the name of the Lord Narayana, when thinking about the sun, he actually chanted with devotion. He actually remembered the Supreme Lord. Like that also some acharyas describe. So that is the other understanding we can get. So that is the way he was attracted by so much mercy. I'm not going into so much glories of the holy name and how Ajamla got delivered by the holy name, because that is the crux of second and third chapters of this canto. And if you get time, please don't leave any purports in this section of 3 chapters. Read all the purports, especially Prabhupada includes an appendix, which is Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur commentary also, I believe at the end of the second chapter. So that will give us the full solid understanding of the holy name and how merciful is the holy name, how glorious is the holy name, how we should be wary of committing offenses in chanting of the holy name to get the full effect of the holy name. So that is the way we can pay attention to that. I'll mention one important thing and we'll move on to the today's section. One important thing is Holy name is all powerful. So when we chant once without offenses, we can go back to spiritual world. That is one principle. Second principle is, then why am I not going to spiritual world right now? Why am I still here? In simple terms, I'm explaining that because I'm still infected with some offenses currently. That is why I'm not able to go to spiritual world today, right now, at this moment. Otherwise, I can go to spiritual world by chanting the holy name. So that's why we should be careful to avoid the offenses. Then how do we avoid offenses? When I know what are the offenses, then I can avoid offenses. Otherwise, I cannot avoid offenses. So it's important to understand what are the offenses, and it's important to avoid offenses while practicing bhakti positively with Sravanam Kirtanam by hearing and chanting the holy name and form, description about form, pastimes, and qualities of the Lord. So that is the key for our bhakti to grow, avoiding the offenses and performing the positive acts of bhakti to develop attachment towards the Supreme Lord. So back to today's verses. So the previous questions were asked about what is dharma and what is adharma by Vishnududas to Yamududas. So now in the 40th verse, Yamududas reply directly to answer the question. They describe anything that is prescribed in Vedas instructions are dharma, and anything that is opposite to the what is prescribed in Vedas is adharma or irreligion. Like that, they clear cut give it directly to answer the questions now. And they also tell these Vedas are not somebody created them. They're directly coming from Supreme Lord. In fact, they're coming from Narayana's breathing. That's how Vedas are eternal. How Narayana is eternal, Vedas are also eternal. And they and there's who's and they're self-born. And they're saying this they have heard from Yamaraja. So this is an important principle for us to learn. When we're considering the answers to life's questions we have, or when we're trying to answer somebody's questions, it is important to not describe what we think. It is more important to describe what we understand as the conclusions from Shastra, Guru, and Sadhu. So that is what we are meant to share. Similarly, here they are referring to their Guru, Yamaraja. What they heard from Yamaraja, they are sharing transparently. This is called transparency, sharing what they understood from the conclusions from Guru, Sadhu, Shastra to others. So that is one principle Prabhupada is sharing. We need to appreciate and learn for ourselves also. That we should not manufacture principles, but we should share what we heard from authorities. So now, Prabhupada gives the example of Arjuna. So how Arjuna was following Dharma, that's why he's called a Dharmi. Why? Because he's following the instructions of Krishna directly. So instructions of Krishna are Dharma. Anything that pleases Krishna, anything that is in following the orders of Krishna is Dharma, like that Prabhupada is clarifying for us. So Prabhupada is taking Dharma definition to a higher level. So instead of just following the Vedic instructions, following the Vedic instructions to please Krishna, following the instructions of Krishna, that is the ultimate. So that's why Prabhupada is elevating to us to there. Another theme Prabhupada takes us is, he's quoting Bhagavad Gita 4.9 verse, Janma karma chamev divyam, evam yav vakti tattvataha, tyaktva deham punarjanma, naiti mameti, so Arjuna. So this verse, Krishna is describing how somebody understands his nature of his both appearance and his activities. Then they go back to him, they don't have to come back again to this material world. So that's what Prabhupada, Krishna is describing in this verse. So Prabhupada is emphasizing from this verse, that how we should understand Krishna and abide by his orders that Krishna has given. That way we can return back home, back to Godhead. So that is a elaboration of following Vedas, which are the orders of Supreme Lord, like that. So now the last point Prabhupada makes in the purport is about how the Vedas are not man-created. They're not Paurushaya. They're Apaurushaya. They're coming from Supreme Lord himself, who is not touched by any of the four defects that we humans have. So that's the point Prabhupada is making. So that means, so then Somebody may think that I'm following this Vedic scripture rules, this rule, that rule, like that. But Prabhupada is reminding us how in Bhagavad Gita Krishna says, Vedascha sarvar ahameva vedya. Who is the real knower of Vedas? Who understands me, who knows me? Anybody who knows Krishna is the knower of Vedas. That is the point Krishna is making. That means I might know this rule, that rule from Vedas. But if I ultimately don't understand that Krishna is the absolute truth, and I need to serve Krishna, I need to please Krishna, then all the rules I'm following are only a secondary benefit, limited benefit only, not the ultimate benefit. So our understanding is tested when we engage in devotional service to Krishna. That is the ultimate understanding. That's the ultimate proof, ultimate evidence of understanding. That's what Prabhupada is telling us. So even when Prabhupada, Krishna says, Janma karma cha medivyam, those who understand my appearance and pastimes, what is the true evidence or fruit of that understanding that we understand Krishna? Is that we're engaged in devotional service to Krishna. So that is what is the real essence of Dharma. In fact, we know from Bhagavad Gita 18th chapter, Sarva Dharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Raja. So we all principles of religion are subservient to surrendering to Krishna. So as long as we surrender to Krishna, that is the highest religious principle we can follow. Then how do we surrender to Krishna? By practicing the process of bhakti. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, all those processes, by practicing them, we surrender to Krishna. So now that is about text 40. Going to text 41. Here, they're defining how Supreme Lord Narayana is situated in Supreme Lord, but he's the cause of everything. He's the cause of all causes. He's the cause of this entire material creation. And what is happening in this material creation? Even though he's sitting in the Vaikuntha Loka or the spiritual world, through his inconceivable, unlimited energies that he has, and through that energies, he engages all the living entities through the modes of nature that is controlling this world, material modes of nature, goodness, passion, and ignorance. So the point being made is Supreme Lord is the controller of everything. Supreme Lord is the cause of everything, including this cosmic manifestation, and he is running everything through his potencies. One such potencies is the material nature. So that is what this verse is describing. That means don't think that people are independent. Don't think that everything is running by its own. Everything is running with under the supervision, under the supreme control of the Supreme Lord. That is the point being made here. So now somebody may take this to the other extreme, which says, "Oh, scriptures are saying that everything is done by Supreme Lord. Then why am I getting punished when I do something wrong? You should make sure I don't do anything wrong." Then that is the way. But if he is making me do something wrong thing, then he should be punished, not me. Like that, somebody may go to the other extreme. So the way to understand this principle is how Supreme Lord is the cause of all causes is, even though everything's running under the plan of the Supreme Lord, under the control of Supreme Lord, his plan and his control still allows our free will to act also. Even though we are acting under free will, even though that is free will is also under the control of Supreme Lord, so he still allows the opportunity to exercise the free will for us. That is why we have all the scriptures. If we don't have a free will to reform ourselves, if we don't have free will to decide what we need to do, then what is the point of learning all these things to do the right thing? So free will is always there with us. That in fact, that is one thing. The free will and desiring are the one things that we have that we can exercise in a proper way to grow in bhakti and to go back to spiritual world also. So that is still there. How much free will we have, how much free will we can exercise depends upon what we have done in the past and what we desired in the past also. But we always have certain amount of free will currently. So we can exercise that free will in a proper way, so that Krishna will encourage that. Krishna will empower us more and more free will to do more and more things in alignment with the plan of the Lord. That's about 41 verse. Going to 42 verse. Yeah, somebody may say, so uh, what is the witness? Is there somebody witnessing what we are doing, so that way we can be awarded awarded accordingly? Yes, nobody can hide and do things in this world. Everything is witnessed by all these witnesses that Yamadutas are telling. What are the witnesses? Sun. Pay attention to these things, because uh, this is important for our Krishna consciousness to understand that how we're always surrounded by people. Even if you're in dark room, even if you're in night time, even if you're in the bed, doesn't matter. The sun, fire, sky, air, always there with us. Demigods, moon, evening time, day, night, directions, water, land, and super soul himself. These are all the witnesses of our activities. When we understand this, then we realize how we are always on the constant CCTV camera. Whether we are really in the external CCTV camera or not, there are cameras from different directions: air, water, land, super soul. So we can never hide from super soul anywhere. So we can, so whatever we are doing is all recorded. So, but the way to see this thing is in two directions. One direction is how everything we do, there is a witness for that. So we can never say, I'm a greatest devotee, but internally I'm doing nonsense. That is not possible. Number one. Number two, the fact that super soul is always with us, that should give positive motivation also. That means if I turn towards the super soul, I'll get the positive direction. I'll get the support I need also. That also we can understand. So so basically they're telling that there are so many witnesses in this verse. Going to the next verse. So in the next verse, they're building on the previous verse, 42nd verse, which is also addressing the question they asked earlier. Who are the actual candidates for punishment? That means who are to be punished? How do we know who are to be punished? They're saying the people candidates for punishment are those who are these witnesses confirm. What do the witnesses confirm? This person has deviated from prescribed duties given in the scriptures. Then they are candidates for punishment. So if the witnesses confirm that somebody deviated from prescribed duties as given in Vedas, then they are candidates for punishments. That is one point they're making. Second point they're making in this verse is everyone engaged in fruitive activities is suitable to be subjected to punishment according to his sinful acts. So the moment I'm doing fruitive activity means I want this, so I'll do this. The moment I'm doing some activity for myself, I'm subject to, I will definitely do some sinful activity because of the bodily conception, because of the um, attraction for sense gratification. I will do some sinful activities. So, in one sense, most people are subject to punishment. That is the point they're making. First point they're making is if somebody doesn't follow prescribed duties according to Vedas and as witnessed by witnesses, then they are subject to punishment. But who are they? Most of the people in the world, because they're trying to do fruitive activities. So naturally, they will engage in some sinful activities. So that is how they're answering the first question. Who are the candidates for punishment? That is one of the questions they asked. Now going to text number 44. They're saying, oh, Vishnu Dudas, you are actually sinless. You don't have a sin. You are very pure. But people living in this material world are all karmis. So they're either acting piously or acting impiously. Both kinds of actions, uh, why they're acting like that? Because they're affected by three modes of material nature. That is why they're acting in the bodily platform like that. So they're describing that people act with the bodily conception, thinking that I'm this body. Then they cannot be inactive. They have to be doing something. So they inevitably do some sinful activity or other because they are acting under the three modes of material nature. So that's why all the living entities in the material world are punishable, is saying. So, but what is the speciality of human beings? We can at least understand how we are supposed to act from the scriptures, whereas animals cannot do that. That is why we have that special intelligence to understand what is right and act accordingly. That is why we are given punishment or enjoyment according to karma we do. Whereas animals, they just give up their karma and then go to the next life, next form of life, next form of life. Like that, they come to the human form of life. They're gradually elevating. So, if we don't understand what is given in scriptures, what are we meant to do? Then we act whatever we know is best to do. Naturally, we'll do some sinful activity because we're not following according to scriptures. That is the point Prabhupada is making the purport. So now text number 45. So text number 45 is describing answer to the question about the process of punishment. So basically, depending upon how much dharma I did in the past, how much adharma I did in the past, this life or past life, then I need to accordingly enjoy or suffer. Based on how much dharma I did get so much enjoyment. Based on how much adharma I did, I get so much suffering like that. So that is how depend how much process of punishment is based on how much dharma adharma we did. Accordingly, we get that much enjoyment or suffering in the this life or the next life as karma to reactions like that. Now going to 46 verse. So now they're saying we can see three different varieties of life because of the contamination of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Some living entities are very peaceful because they're in mode of goodness. Some living entities are very restless because they're in mode of ignorance. In between, or restless are mode of passion because they're trying to get something all the time. Whereas foolish, those people who are in ignorance are foolish like that. Similarly, some people are happy, mode of goodness. Some people are unhappy, mode of ignorance. Some people are in between happiness and unhappiness. That is in mode of passion. And another categorization they're saying is people in mode of goodness are religious, people in mode of ignorance are irreligious, and somewhere in between semi-religious are people in mode of passion like that they're describing. So this person, next person, telling one important point. Let us say I'm enjoying too much right now. That means I did a lot of dharma in the past life. That means I did more, led mode of goodness life in the past life. Similarly, if I'm doing mode of goodness activity now, I'm going to get enjoyment in the next life. But if I'm suffering so much in this life, that means I did so much mode of ignorance activity in the past life, so much adharma in the past life. Similarly, if I'm doing adharmic activities now, sinful activities now, I can expect guaranteedly punishment in the next life, suffering in the next life. So that is the point they're describing. So this is important awakening for people who think this life is all in all. There's nothing beyond this life. No past life, no future life. I just have this life. I enjoy it to the fullest extent. That's it. So this they're opening their vision that there is a past life, there is a future life. And by just seeing what is happening to you now, you can understand what happened to you in the past and what you did in the past. So you can prepare for next life also accordingly. Like that, they're giving understanding for us in this verse. Prabhupada elevates us to a higher level. Somebody may think I do good now so that I will get good in the enjoyment in the future. That's enough. Prabhupada is giving a higher understanding that whenever we are in these modes of nature, they're temporary. Sometimes goodness is prominent, sometimes passion is prominent, sometimes ignorance is prominent. So naturally, I will get suffering when ignorance is prominent. So that's why the best policy is to get out of these three modes altogether. to go to transcendence beyond the three modes of nature. How is that possible? When we engage ourselves in bhakti. That is the angle Prabhupada is bringing to this purport. Even though Yamdutas are not going to bhakti yet, but Prabhupada is telling us the best policy we have is to engage in bhakti so we can go even beyond mode of goodness. Why go beyond mode of goodness? Because mode of goodness is also temporary only. Mode of goodness is also bind us to this material world only. Because of mode of goodness, we need to take another birth again, another body again. So why take that? We can live an eternal life of bliss and knowledge in the spiritual world. That is the way. The way to do that is by engaging in bhakti. That is the principle Prabhupada is sharing now itself. That will come later on in the next chapters. So 47th verse. So another example is given. Like let us say now springtime comes. Then beautiful flowers and fruit comes. Then we know in the past also spring came. And the future also spring will come like that. That is the example is giving to understand that based on how we are living now, we can understand past life and future life also like that being described. Now going to 40th verse. 40th verse, Yamaraja is being glorified. How Yamaraja is being glorified as omniscient and omnipotent because he's in touch with super soul. He's a Mahajana, is a devotee of the Supreme Lord. He can understand from the super soul everything that everybody has done in the past, everything is going to do in the future like that. That's why Yamaraja is an empowered representative of the Supreme Lord. That is being given in this verse. However, the next life, next body we get is decided by Supreme Lord, but Yamaraja will act on it to make sure we go to that body like that. So now 49th verse. So if somebody is in this bodily conception thinking that this body is an all in all, thinking that this life is an all in all, then they will go mad in sense gratification and they act sinfully. But if somebody can understand through Vedic knowledge that we had a past life, we'll have a next life in this body and another body, then with that illumination of the Vedic knowledge, they can act properly in actually devotional service. That's what Prabhupada is telling us. That when we act in devotion service, then we can go beyond the modes and we can be eternally happy, not temporarily happy. So that is the point being made. So this is opposite to people in ignorance thinking that this body is in all and acting accordingly. So going to 50th verse, this is describing how as a spirit soul, we utilize this body and senses and we have these desires and we try to enjoy this material world alone with the working senses, with the knowledge acquiring senses. We try to enjoy this world, but our goal should be to satisfy Krishna, not to enjoy ourselves. That way we can become free from this material world and go back to eternal life of knowledge and bliss. That's the point Prabhupada is making in the purport. 51st verse is also extension of the same thing, which is that because we're trying to enjoy with these working senses and knowledge acquiring senses, sometimes we become a demigod if we are in mode of goodness. Sometimes we stay back in the earthly planet because we're in mode of passion. Sometimes we go to hellish planets because of earthly, because of the mode of ignorance, like that is describing. But whether we're in heavenly planets or earthly planets or hellish planets or lower planet systems, we're bound to suffer some kind of misery. That is the point being made here. So the last verse for today, there's an example of a silkworm is given. Silkworm apparently makes a cocoon by its own saliva. And then even though it makes its own cocoon, it gets stuck in this cocoon itself. And finally it dies also sometimes because people want silk from the silkworm, from the cocoon. And it cannot come out also. Similarly, living entities, because this bodily conception of life, they're doing some activity or other and they get some reaction. Because of the reaction, they have to act again. Because of the action, they're getting reaction again. So that they're going in this birth and death cycle in this material world. So that is how we're going around in this material world because of the fruitive activity. That's the point being made in this verse. So essentially, the overall theme of this section is that we should understand that because of the influence of the modes of nature, because of the bodily conception of life, we're trying to enjoy this in this material world. Instead, we should understand we are not this body, we're a spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna, servant of Krishna, and then be wary of sense gratification and be conscious that we are trying to serve Krishna, trying to please Krishna by engaging in devotional service under the guidance of a guru. That is the way we can go back to spiritual world and have eternal happiness. So that is the essence of this section. We can pause here. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kupa sindubhyevacha Paditanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Thank you, devotees. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji.